On the darkest of nights, the crown jewel of the western lands, Princess Zahara, finally moved to execute her grand design, a plan forged in 10 years of cold, simmering hatred to settle the score for her family's brutal execution by the Sultan. With the raw, untamed might of the full moon as her amplifier, she unleashed her forbidden, ancient power, seizing total control of the Sultan's mind, driving him into a screaming, incoherent frenzy. He tore through the streets of the capital in a fit of wild hysteria, terrifying every waking soul. When the city's council of elders begged the new Grand Priestess, Zahara, for her divine intervention to cure their sovereign, they had no idea they were asking the wolf to guard the sheep. She prepared to extinguish his life and his reign in one swift, public spectacle. A long time ago, nestled high in the mountainous terrain of the ancient Malian Empire, there thrived the city of Jen. The air was thick with the scent of shea butter and frankincense, and the city was a maze of magnificent, mud-brick structures. Here lived Zahara, a woman whose beauty surpassed every jewel in the Sultan's treasury. Zahara was lithe and statuesque, with curves that caught the eye, skin the color of warm honey, and dazzling golden-flecked brown eyes framed by long, dark braids. An intoxicating perfume of rare spices clung to her, a promise of hidden desires that followed her like a shadow. Her allure was the subject of countless hushed conversations. Every man in the realm, from the lowliest farmer to the most decorated general, was utterly obsessed with her. It was as if she carried an enchantment that ensnared any man who dared to look upon her. The other women of Jen viewed her with a fiery, bitter resentment, labeling her a homewrecker, their marriages utterly defenseless against her charm. Even Sultana Amina, the Sultan's first wife, kept a watchful distance whenever Zahara was near Sultan Tahir. When she merely walked the stone streets, everyone paused, captivated, treating her like an otherworldly spirit. She was cherished and revered, not just by men, but seemingly by the very spirits of the land. At the astonishing age of 19, she was proclaimed the Grand Priestess of Jen by Izu, the Sultan's chief sorcerer, following the sudden, unexpected demise of the former chief oracle, Baba Monday. You see, Baba Monday, while he lived, was unlike all the other men. He was the only one in the entire city who showed no interest in Zahara. He was the single person who could see the coiled malice beneath her perfect veneer of beauty. He often publicly called her a demoness, or a poisonous flower, even as men offered her lavish gifts at her feet. The core mystery was why he hated her with such singular focus. Even more perplexing were the events surrounding his death. Only days before his alleged sickness took him, he was radiating good health and vibrant energy. Furthermore, all chief oracles traditionally left clear, detailed instructions for their passing and named a successor. Baba Monday did neither. It was widely known he despised her, yet Zahara was ordained and appointed by Izu, the Sultan's sorcerer, shortly after the suspicious death, driven by the immediate need for spiritual guidance. When the citizens learned of the chief oracle's abrupt death and Zahara's shocking, overnight ascension to the Grand Priestess role, a wave of cold dread and confusion washed over Jen. The men who had been her countless lovers felt an intense guilt and uncertainty about having a woman of such loose morals serving as the voice of the spirits. The city's women, who had once loathed her for her promiscuity, were now forced to seek her out for divine counsel. Everyone in Jen was unnerved, except for Aya, a young apprentice in the city. 6 months before Zahara took the high title, she had a confidant named Aya. One night, while sharing secrets by the light of a flickering lamp, Zahara revealed her ultimate ambition, to take the Sultan's throne. Aya was a gorgeous, slightly older woman who was also known for attracting men, though she lacked Zahara's sheer power and widespread fame, leading to a quiet, consuming envy. That night, Aya heard Zahara's plan to become the ruler and burst out laughing, calling her a hopeless dreamer. The Sultan has 4 powerful sons, all of marrying age, ready to claim the throne should anything happen to him. And surely you know, Jen has never had a woman ruler before, Aya pointed out. I am acutely aware of all these obstacles, Zahara replied, her eyes glittering. Therefore, I have devised a strategy to bypass every single challenge and seize my destiny. Aya leaned forward, pressing her for details. Zahara explained that she intended to involve the spirits directly and force their hand to crown her, against all tradition. But how? Aya whispered. By doing what I excel at, Zahara purred. Manipulating men. Zahara then told Aya she must first become the chief priestess, and to achieve this, she needed Aya's assistance. The following day, Zahara led Aya down a treacherous, overgrown path that snaked toward the dreaded forest of whispers. As she followed, Aya's voice was thin and trembling, begging, "Where are we going? Where are we going?" Her breath came fast and shallow from sheer terror of the deep woods. Zahara calmed her, promising they were nearly there. Suddenly, they emerged upon a haunting, still pool of water with no visible source, nestled deep within the forbidden forest. "Where are we, and how is there a spring with no river in the middle of this desolate place?" Aya asked, bewildered. Zahara began to speak, her voice low and distant. 10 years ago, when I was only a child, my parents and I were driven from Jen because my father could not pay his taxes to the Sultan. We were abandoned in this forest with nothing. In the months that followed, my parents and little brother were all tragically killed by wild beasts. I was the only one left. I crawled my way out, half dead, and found myself on this very bank. Wait, wait, wait. Aya interrupted, horror-struck. You told me you grew up an orphan in the city, and never knew your mother or father. Yes. I lied. Zahara admitted. Aya's face sank, contorted by fear and profound betrayal. Zahara continued, when I arrived at this spot, nearly lifeless, Makemi, the goddess of the broken-hearted and forsaken, rose from this water and found me. Seeing my desperate state, she commanded me to tell her my story. I recounted everything, my family's banishment by the Sultan and the horrifying end of my loved ones. My tale brought the goddess to tears and ignited a righteous fury in her. She vowed to help me. That very day, with her divine power, she rebuilt my body. My skin, once rough and scarred, became smooth and began to shimmer. My uneven features straightened and refined, and my dark eyes were infused with a brilliant, gold-flecked hue. She had transformed me into the most beautiful woman on the face of the earth. In her own words, she promised me, as long as you are the most desired woman in the world, you will never be helpless again, and no man will ever cast you out, as they did your family. The goddess taught me the ancient arts of seduction and how to use pleasure as a leash to control men. But because she adored me so much, she gave me a power beyond beauty. What do you mean, an extra power? Aya asked, her voice a tremor. On the night of the full moon, when the goddess's strength is at its peak, I am gifted with an astounding ability, a power that lets me control the minds and bodies of the last 5 men I have slept with, merely with a thought. Zahara, Zahara, I've called your name 3 times. What madness is this? Goddess? Power? Controlling men? What in the spirit's name are you telling me? You are terrifying me. I must go home. Please, take me back to Jen now. Aya pleaded. I cannot, Zahara said, her voice firm. I brought you here because I need your help, Aya. To bring down the chief oracle and take his place, I need you to perform a task for me. Then I will be one step closer to claiming the throne. What is it? Aya asked, resigned. First, you must promise me you won't scream, Zahara replied. Before Aya could ask why, a shimmering figure of a stunning mysterious woman materialized in the air. It was Makemi, the goddess of the broken-hearted and forsaken. Aya's jaw went slack as she struggled to process the impossible sight before her, but the goddess spoke with a gentle, soothing tone. Do not be afraid, dear one. I will not harm you. Zahara has spoken highly of you, and today, I am here to grant you the gift of beauty. Aya's racing heart finally calmed as she listened, and she bowed her head. The goddess blessed her with a radiance that mirrored Zahara's own perfection. Zahara then told her that she, too, now held the power to control the last 5 men she had been with. This newfound power would be essential in the destruction of the chief oracle. The following morning, Zahara took Aya to the house of Izu, one of the Sultan's most trusted sorcerers. Izu was notorious as a corrupt man who lived for gold and women, easily bought by either. When Zahara promised him her body for 2 nights, he eagerly agreed to help her eliminate Baba Monde and secure her place as the new Grand Priestess. While at his house, Aizu explained to the two women that if Baba Mande died without naming a successor, the duty of anointing the new chief oracle would fall to him, the chief sorcerer. He would then be able to declare Zahara the new grand priestess. They simply needed to dispose of him first. Aya then asked Zahara how she planned to accomplish this and how her special power fit into the scheme. Zahara explained that the old legends claimed no single man could ever face the chief oracle in combat and survive. It would require a minimum of 10 warriors to subdue him. Zahara declared that she planned to sleep with 5 strong men before the end of the week, including Aizu, and advised Aya to do the exact same. This way, their combined powers would grant them mental control over 10 able-bodied men to ambush the chief oracle, Baba Mande, on the night before the harvest festival, which was the next full moon. Reluctantly, Aya agreed to Zahara's terrifying proposal. When the appointed night arrived, they commanded an army of 10 physically powerful men who marched silently into Baba Mande's inner shrine. They overpowered him and stripped him of his ceremonial vestments. As the 10 men held the oracle down, he began to chant, summoning the raw power of the ancestral spirits to come to his defense. But in a flash, Zahara rushed forward and forced herself upon him, physically violating him. This dark act broke his sacred covenant with the spirits. Instantly, he was struck down, the divine lightning of the angered gods killing him where he lay. The following morning, just before the harvest festival began, Aizu delivered the tragic news to the Sultan and the elders. The chief oracle had passed. He told the court that the body was found lifeless, with no marks to suggest an assassination, concluding that Baba Mande had succumbed to a sudden, strange illness. The Sultan, trusting his most senior spiritual advisor, Aizu, asked him to name Baba Mande's successor, as he was the only man in Gen qualified to do so. Exactly as planned, Aizu declared Zahara, the most beautiful maiden in all the land, as the new grand priestess. Immediately, the Sultan sent for Zahara to be brought to the palace for her anointing ceremony to officially begin her duties. As she entered the royal chambers, the Sultan's eyes locked onto hers. He sensed her hypnotic power and could almost smell the danger radiating from her very aura, yet his hands were tied. He proceeded, officially ordaining her as the new grand priestess, entirely unaware that he had just signed the warrant for his own demise. 6 months had elapsed since Zahara's ordination, and during this time, a suffocating atmosphere of fear and confusion paralyzed Gen. No one felt safe. The Sultan had, for all intents and purposes, gone mad. He had issued an impromptu decree. All taxes, tithes, and offerings were now to be 100% remitted to the Grand Priestess's chambers, Zahara's house. He also decreed that any person who dared to criticize the Grand Priestess would be immediately banished. Within half a year, he had driven out all 4 of his sons and had his first wife, Sultana Amina, imprisoned because they dared to criticize his obsessive, newfound devotion to the office of the Grand Priestess. He acted entirely under a sinister spell. Many in the city whispered that Zahara was a sorceress, bewitching the Sultan and making him her puppet. If only they knew how right they were. A week after Zahara's anointing, she began cleverly inviting the Sultan to the city's grand shrine, feigning that the spirits had a message for him. Once he arrived, she would command him to send his guards away, claiming it was the will of the spirits that they speak alone. Once isolated, she would use her intoxicating beauty to seduce him, passionately making love to him. As weeks turned into months, she began coming to the palace at night, seducing the Sultan in his most private quarters. It wasn't long before the Sultan was utterly obsessed with her, doing anything she asked to please her. This dark affair lasted 6 months. During this period, Zahara was the most powerful person in the realm, but she wasn't finished. She planned to seize the throne entirely. On one fateful night, she moved to implement her final, destructive plan. You see, Zahara had been systematically bribing the royal guards and the city elders with the livestock and grain taxes the Sultan had gifted her, quietly buying their allegiance away from their sovereign. On that chilling night of the full moon, she used her ultimate power to command the Sultan to shed his clothes and behave like a raving lunatic, running naked through the city. A commotion woke the city that night. When the people rushed out to see what the noise was, there was Sultan Tahir, naked and utterly mad. He ran, disturbing the entire city throughout the night. At first, the citizens were too petrified to touch their royalty, but their patience soon ran out. They summoned the elders and the grand priestess, Zahara, to intervene. When Zahara arrived, she solemnly declared that the Sultan had profoundly angered the spirits, and as punishment, they had inflicted him with madness. The people were aghast. She told them she would attempt to plead with the spirits on his behalf. She then instructed the 10 bribed men to hold the Sultan down, and pretended to lay her hands on his head in a gesture of spiritual deliverance. But in that crucial moment, she quietly and subtly commanded the Sultan to stop breathing using her seductive, mind-controlling power. Helpless and enslaved to her will, Sultan Tahir stopped inhaling and began desperately gasping for air. The entire city watched in horror as tears streamed from the Sultan's eyes, desperately fighting for breath, but Zahara's enchantment was too strong. Suddenly, the loud, wrenching gasps gave way to a chilling, heavy silence. The Sultan's soul had departed his body. Zahara covered her face, silently allowing a flicker of a smile to cross her lips. Her 10-year plan for vengeance was complete. She had finally repaid her father's banishment by banishing the Sultan from the living world. The elders, who were now fully in her service, immediately confirmed to the terrified people that the spirits had struck down the Sultan for his offenses. With the Sultan's children and wife imprisoned or banished, they declared the only person qualified to wield the throne was Zahara, the Grand Priestess. They solemnly removed the Sultan's crown and placed it upon Zahara's head. The entire populace of Jen bowed low as the elders shouted the unified decree, "Hail the new king! Hail King Zahara!" Zahara's eyes were alight with triumph and deep, satisfying closure. However, Aya, her co-conspirator who stood among the bowing crowd, knowing the truth of every vile act, only looked at Zahara with profound disgust for the monster she had become, and regretted the grave sin of ever helping her. If you were absolutely captivated by this first chapter, and you demand to know what happens next to King Zahara and her co-conspirator, Aya, then rush to the comments now and write, Part 2 needed. Also, tell me your favorite moment from the story and what lesson you'll take away from it. Give this video a massive like and hit that subscribe button for more gripping tales from ancient Africa. We'll see you in the next epic narrative.